Hey, what's up guys? It's Michael, and today I'm going to be reviewing the YuHu V2M. First and foremost, this is a really exciting release. You can pick up the YuHu V2M at SpeedCubeShop.com for about $12.95. So first off, going into the design of the puzzle. This design of the puzzle is really simple, so when I noticed when you take a look at the piece construction is that the edges are very simplistic. And you can see that there's no torpedoes or anything, just like a little line right there. And then same thing for the corner. Yeah, so when they're together, there's no really like locking mechanism, they're sort of just there. And that's fine for the most part. This Megaminx, at the tensions that I had it set up on, which I will explain a little more in depth later. At the tensions I have it set up on, it is possible to pop. I have not had issues with it popping in assault, but it actually pops mostly during scrambling, so just keep that in mind when you're buying this puzzle. The design actually to me most resembles the YuHu, and later when I go more in depth you'll sort of like hear the YuHu come back in a variety of ways. And you can see that there's no torpedo on the edge, and it's very similar, the big difference being that there's holes in the corner, and that actually makes the difference between most of these two in terms of the feel. So the YuHu, especially for the design, the YuHu has a big problem with corner twisting, regardless of the tensions. This puzzle, the YuHu, does not really corner twist as much. It can, but you have to be pretty forceful. So I would consider corner twisting not a problem on this Megaminx, which is a problem in most Megaminxes. So that is something refreshing to see. So one thing that's a really big deal for me is the weight of a puzzle. Especially for Megaminx, because in Megaminx I want it to be as light as possible. So this Megaminx weighs in at about 152 grams, and then I would say for most people they're probably going to compare it to the Chi Galaxy, the X-Man Design Galaxy, and the X-Man Design V2 is 143, and then the LM is going to be slightly heavier at about 155, 156. And then if you're comparing it to the budget Megaminx, I just wanted to show you right here, the MJC is much heavier than pretty much everything else I have. And then finally, the GAN Megaminx is at about under 120, about 116. The YuHu is not the lightest puzzle, it is slightly heavier than the V2, which is the small Galaxy Megaminx. It is also slightly heavier than the YuHu if anyone has the YuHu. So this is pretty much right in the middle of the road. However, there's something that I'd like to point out here. The turn feel of the YuHu is very different than what I receive from most of the other Chi Megaminxes. What I mean here is that the turns are very quick, yet very controllable and stable. So it doesn't tend to overshoot in terms of its speed, which is the initial problem of the GAN. And it isn't dragging at all. It doesn't feel draggy, which in my Galaxy setup, it does tend to feel like it's dragging. And in, say, for example, a dry Galaxy, it's just the type of speed, the combination of the speed and the corner cutting and the feel that this Megaminx gives, for me, doesn't appeal for a quick setup. So I like something set up that's a little more controllable here, because when I do something that's really fast, it's not something that really works out for me on this puzzle specifically. So for this one, the way I set it up, it actually has the perfect combination of stability and speed and no drag. So actually what's interesting is when I do long sessions on this puzzle, I actually feel more comfortable doing this than this, even though this one is lighter. The next thing I want to go over real quickly is the magnets. I think the magnets are the perfect strength. I would probably say that they're just strong enough to have the Megaminx be stable, but not strong towards overwhelming. So I think the magnet strength is pretty similar to the Galaxy actually. Maybe the Galaxy is actually the tiniest bit stronger, and I definitely think it's a little bit, probably the same as the MGC. And a lot weaker than the GAN. So keep that in mind when you're buying this puzzle in terms of what magnetic strength you're looking for. One other thing that I want to tackle here, and it's actually what I think to be the biggest flaw of this puzzle, is actually the reverse corner cutting. Now, the reverse corner cutting on this puzzle isn't bad, and the way I have it set up on the tensions, it can cut about half a corner, half a piece right here, which isn't bad. But compared to some of the other Megaminxes, the main worthy ones, which I would consider the Galaxy and the GAN, it's just a lot different because the Galaxy is able to cut almost pretty much a full piece. Same thing for the GAN right here, it's almost effortless. So these days, forward corner cutting isn't really that big of a deal. Most puzzles can cut a lot of the same, but the reverse is what's, to me, in Megaminx is the big deal right now. With better reverse corner cutting, the solves tend to be smoother and less catchy. So, real quickly, after going through the design of the puzzle, out of the box, it was really scratchy and it really reminded me of old MoYu YJ puzzles. Since it reminded me of an older style puzzle, the design is very simplistic. I thought, okay, it might have something to do with the plastic quality. I'm just going to go ahead and do a bunch of solves with no setup and break into plastic a little bit. And that's exactly what I did. Probably did about 50 to 100 solves throughout the days. After I did a decent amount of solves, I felt that the feel of the puzzle started to change a little bit. It was still sandy, but not as bad and not as scratchy. So I went ahead and took it all apart and I decided to start setting it up. So the way I set it up is, first off, the tensions is what I had to address, of course after wiping down the puzzle and the pieces. So the tensions right here, if I pull on the edges, you can barely sort of pull it, but you can sort of tell the tensions by pulling on the corners a little better. I think, in my opinion, my tensions are pretty moderate, and if you go any tighter than this, I think popping will be a much bigger problem. If you want to go tighter, it's really up to you. I don't think it'll be a bad thing in this puzzle. The corner cutting may be more prominent an issue if you go tighter. So when I set up, when I took down the puzzle, I used Traxxas 50K to lube the core. I decided to put in some Traxxas 30K. You don't need to put a lot. I think I put only about 2 lines. So what I wanted to do next is I wanted to slow it down a little. So the thing I did was I basically applied Controleus. So I chose a piece lube that I thought I usually don't use in Megaminxes. I actually used Martian. And the end product turned into a puzzle that's honestly smooth and crunchy. Crunchy just like the YuHu. I said I would come back to this, but basically this YuHu is crunchy and clacky. Much like it kind of feels like a Valk in a sense, except it's a Megaminx. But since that's because the corners have holes in it. This, since it doesn't have any holes, you can sort of imagine what a Valk felt like if it didn't have any holes, and that's probably what you would feel right here. And I almost forgot to address this, but obviously there's a different ridge design, and it looks very interesting, and it kind of looks weird at first glance. I would say functionally, it's 99% of what the Galaxy can accomplish, so there's almost no difference. What I will say is that this ridge design allows for better recognition, in my opinion. There is no like weird shadows going on in terms of like inside the piece, like the ridge. It's very confusing, but say for example when I switch from this to this and then this back to this, I have a really hard time recognizing because I can recognize really well in the GAN because the colors are very just bright, contrasting, and in your face. And I actually have a similar experience with this ridge design. So the ridge design I think is better for recognition. Alright, so the big question, should you buy the YuHu V2M? So it's a budget Megaminx and that's what it's marketed as. And honestly, the only budget Megaminx that compares, especially in the price range, is the YJ MGC. And I said earlier, the YuHu makes the MGC obsolete. They're the same price, but the MGC has some problems that the YuHu just directly addresses. Now, in terms of comparing it as a main-worthy Megaminx, there's obviously 2 contenders. The Galaxy, doesn't matter what size, Galaxy V2, LM, V2M, doesn't matter, or the GAN. So these are the big, 3 big boys. So obviously, I would personally choose the YuHu over the GAN any day, because the GAN is incredibly expensive, and the only thing about the GAN is that it's light. And this will give you a similar experience, even though it's heavier. Now, in terms of the V2M, remember there was a key point that I brought up about the flaw of the YuHu, which is the reverse corner cutting. The reverse corner cutting of the YuHu is admittedly not as good as the Galaxy, and you can feel it in the solve. In the Galaxy, you have a much smoother solve experience and less catches, and in the YuHu, I tend to catch more, and I would think that other people would have this similar experience. If you have a rough turning style, I would recommend going with the Galaxy, but if you already have an accurate turning style, it doesn't matter if you're a new Megaminx solver or an experienced Megaminx solver, I would go straight into the YuHu. And I think all in all, since it's $12, $13, I think anybody could really purchase this, and it's just a great item to have, a top tier puzzle at a price that's uncanny. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and shoot a couple solves in so you can see it. Hey guys, I have some really exciting news to share with you guys for those who have made it to the end of the video, as you know, a reward for your dedication. Really appreciate it. So basically, myself along with 3 other people, Preetham, Manu, and Dan, we've banded together to create Cubers Live. Cubers Live is going to be the host of the Twisty Puzzle Cup. That is something else we've also created. The Twisty Puzzle Cup is something we designed to eventually make synonymous with WCA recognized competitions. We were trying to make it to where our mission was to cater to both spectators and cubers alike. So it's going to be really exciting. We're going to be holding a season or multiple seasons in the future, divided into segments. We're holding huge bracket rounds for every single event except for 7x7 and 5 line for time constraint purposes. We're also trying to make it to where each competition is really short or not as long as previous competitions that you've experienced, just to make it a little more enjoyable to watch. There is literally so much more information I haven't shared with you guys. I just wanted to get this out there as sort of a, not a soft launch, but just something to get you guys excited for it. Really appreciate it. Thank you again for watching, and I hope that you guys will hear from us soon. Cubers Live. Thank you.